All right, welcome to the course. In this video, we're going to start our application. So what I want to do is create a new project in Xcode. So what I'm going to do is hit File, New, and Project, or Command-Shift New. You're going to want to select Single View App, and let's give it a product name. So what I want to call my project is Get It Done. I built this already, not all the way, but enough to give you that overview of how the application worked. So let's go ahead and create our project. Where do I want to put this? Make sure Use CoreData is selected. I'm going to put it on the desktop. So again, make sure Use CoreData is selected and you give it a product name. Okay, now I'm going to put it on the desktop and hit Create. And that's going to open up our project. So first thing you do when you compile it, you can either build it on your phone or in the simulator. I'm going to be in the iPhone X simulator, so if you want to follow along, that's the simulator I will be using. So let's see. I'll pull this over. And you see this is our completed app. You hit plus, that thing comes down. You click on it. This goes up, and then the keyboard goes right there. So if you want to simulate the keyboard, you just hit Command K, now in the simulator, and it'll open it up. So for this, I'm just going to say build sketch course, and then I'm going to hit add. Okay, so you get the idea of the application. Let's go ahead and flip over to the app we're building. Okay, now if you build this is what you're going to see. Now, this is with storyboards. If you go to main.storyboard, you can drag things on here. And if you're new to iOS development, this is what storyboard is. You can put stuff like a label on. So I just searched label down here. And if you were to rebuild this app, you will see that we have a label on our screen. So that's kind of what storyboards is. And what I really don't like storyboards, because if we want to do anything with this label, we have to connect it to our code, and then we can do stuff with it. And I just think that it's a really weird kind of disconnect. So what I like to do is build my applications completely from scratch without storyboards. I also think that it's just kind of like a shortcut, which makes things even more complicated. So let's right-click on main.storyboard and hit delete. And I'm going to select move to trash. And then if you try and launch the application, it won't work. We'll get an error in the console. And let's see, I forgot the shortcut. I've been doing a lot of JavaScript lately, but okay, I guess it opens up by itself. But basically, you see it says NS invalid argument exception reason cannot find a storyboard named main and bundle, NS bundle. So to get rid of this error, we just have to close the app real quick, go to this folder up here, and then go to info.plist. Now in info.plist, we just got to get rid of one of these items here. So let's see which one it is. So you'll see that it says main storyboard file base name right here is right there. We want to get rid of that because it's going to get rid of that error. It's telling us that we have a main.storyboard, but we don't. So now when you run it, it's going to work. So while that's booting up, I'm going to increase my font size so you can see my code a bit better. Okay, I think this is the one. Yeah, this is the one I use for videos. I've only made a few Swift videos, but you can check my YouTube. And by the time you're watching this, there might be a few more up, if not a whole bunch. I'm going to plan on adding in more. But basically, that's my theme to get this font size bigger. Now, you'll see we have a black screen, and I got rid of these comments. So we're ready to start our project. And yeah, so I'm going to get rid of did receive memory warning, because we don't need that, and we don't want it, because we're not going to be doing anything with memory like that. So now we have our view did load, and if you type in here, let's type out print and say view did load. And then now if we close our app and try to run it, that's not going to print because our application has no idea what this controller is doing. It's just another controller. We could make another controller if we wanted to, and it would just be sitting in here in our project doing nothing, just like this one. So what we have to do is actually tell our application in the app delegate that we want to use this view controller as the root view controller of the application. So let's go ahead and do that now. I'm going to go to appDelegate, and in this one we have in this file, we have all of these methods. Most of these are for CoreData, and they look kind of complicated, but that's mostly just comments. It's really not very complicated in here. If you try and create a project without CoreData, it will basically just give you, I think it's maybe it's more of these. I think it's just these bottom two that are for CoreData. Okay, yeah, because these are obviously application methods. So what we want to do in here is go to this did finish launching with options one. And I'm just going to close out my left tab here so you can see better. And you'll see that we have this comment. So let's get rid of that. And this is basically the launch point of our application. So if we type in here, print did finish launching with options and run our application. So I just hit Command S and then Command R to run it. I don't think you even need to save the file when you run it. So if you just hit Command R or you click on this play button, it will launch the app. And once it boots up, you'll see it says did finish launching with options. Now, the point we came in here for wasn't just to print this, but to actually get our view controller up and running. So the way we can do that is by using this window variable right here, this UI window variable that is named window. So if I click on this top left tab here up at the top, you'll see this comes to the side. Now, if we go to viewcontroller.swift, we want to see this now in the console, right beneath this did finish with launch options, did finish launching with options. So let's go ahead and head back to the app delegate, and let's close this a bit, and let's try and get this in there. So what we have to do is say window, and we're referencing this window variable up here. And if you see, it says the window to use when presenting a storyboard. So what we have to do is say window is equal to UI window. And it says a UI window is the backdrop for your app's user interface and the object that dispatches events to your views. So pretty descriptive, and I recommend that whenever we're building things like this, I'm not going to do it for every single variable, every single type, but I recommend that you read these descriptions and kind of acquaint yourself with what these things mean, because that will help you, that will make all the difference in learning iOS development. You need to understand how things work on a more base level. I mean, you don't have to go into all of Swift code and understand how every little detail works. You can actually get by and make really cool applications without knowing a whole bunch. But if you want to be a good developer and you want to get paid at a company, you want to get hired, you really need to understand how these things work. So just as little as reading these descriptions can help so much. Now, what we want to do is say UI window, and then let's hit shift and shift and 9 to get that, put in a parenthesis, and let's choose the option with a frame. And it says initializes and returns a newly allocated view object with a specified frame rectangle. So as you can see, by doing this, we're going to have a view object that has this frame. So it would make sense that we give the frame of our application, the frame of our phone. So what we want to do is say, for CGRect, let's just say UI screen, and it says an object that defines the properties associated with a hardware-based display. So we're getting the UI screen. We're getting the properties associated with the iPhone. And then if you hit dot, there's a variable in this class called main or screen. So UI screen dot main. Okay, UI screen dot main. My bad. And that says returns the screen object representing the device's screen. So basically what we just said. And then if we say, okay, we have this screen object, right? Now there's got to be some sort of rectangle in this or some bounds that will give us the dimensions. So let's say dot bounds, and you see we have a CGRect. Now, if you remember when we had this frame, when we were just at this point, it said that we need a frame, so, or a CGRect. So yeah, the bounding rectangle of the screen measured in points. So if we do this, we'll have our entire screen. So if you say print window dot frame and run the application, you'll see that it prints out the screen. But I'm going to get rid of that. It's going to launch up and still print it. And it says optional. And the reason it's optional is something for discussion later on. Ignore the optional part. What we're looking at is just this. You'll see that our device is 375 pixels by 812. So yeah, we have our window. Now what we need to do is say window dot make key invisible. So it says shows the window and makes it the key window. So all that means is it's making it our window. It's putting it in our app. Now what we need to do is actually specify what goes in this window, what kind of view controllers go in here. So we can say window is equal to window question mark dot root view controller, the root view controller for your window, is equal to view controller, and call it like a class. So what we're doing here is we're going into view controller.swift, and we're basically running this function. I mean, it's not this exact function, but if you've done any object-oriented programming, you can think of this as an initializer. Well, it is an initializer. So basically what we're doing is we're getting our class and we're putting it in root view controller, an instance of this. So if we reload the application, we'll now see that it has the printing that is in our view controller. It says view did load, and it will be in our console here, or in our output. So it did finish launching with options and view did load. Now, if we go back into here, another thing we can do instead of just directly putting it in here is using Command X on this to cut it. And then I'm going to get rid of this print statement, and I'm going to say let main, well, what do we want to call this? We want to call this like the welcome screen, right? Is equal to view controller, right? Now what we can do is just put this in here, welcome screen. So when we reload the app, we'll now have this view controller as our root view controller. Now, one thing I'd like to do before we end this video is basically rename our view controller, because that's the name of the class. It's of type UI view controller. We want to be more descriptive so we can reduce the amount of comments we have in our code. So what I'd like to do is call this welcome controller with a capital W and capital C. Now let's rename the file as well. Let's see, so command click, rename. I know Visual Studio Code has the rename option. All right, if you click on it and hit R, it will rename it. Now let's call this welcome controller. Okay, now let's go back into our app delegate, and let's, instead of calling view controller, you'll notice that we get an error now. What we have to do is say welcome controller. Okay, so that's all we have to do. Now I'm just going to rename this welcome screen to say WC for welcome controller, just to be like, that's descriptive enough because we have this here, so we know what WC is. It's welcome controller, obviously. It's not wet cat, obviously. So yeah, now what we want to do is basically, we don't really know if we're even in here except for this print statement. So one thing I like to do instead of a print, because we might have other things in here when we launch up a new view controller, is I like to go in here and I like to say view.background color is equal to dot yellow or something, a random color, cyan, white, whatever color that will kind of specify besides black, of course, because it's already black. And I usually don't do white either, just because you don't really know if the screen's there. White and black make it kind of hard to tell, so I like to choose a color. Now, I'm going to just delete this. I'm going to reload it. It looks like Xcode is pre-building. It sometimes does that, takes a minute. But while that's going on, if it allows us, I'll say view, and you see it says the view that the controller manages. So basically, the view controller, this is the root view. This is our main view in our view controller. And we're going to be placing a lot of views on here. So you'll see in our completed app, let me just pull that up. You'll see that we have all these kind of views in here with these buttons and all this. These all exist on the view. So if we say view.background color is equal to dot cyan. Okay, it's not running. I'm just going to close out of the application. All right, it's wonderful. I'm going to close out of this using force quit. Now I'm going to reopen the project here. Okay, so that's going to load up. Now, I've been pretty descriptive in this video. I've kind of like talked a lot about what these specific things mean. I'm not going to do that with every single thing we do just because it will waste a lot of your time. I mean, it might help describe things a bit better, but ultimately it's not going to help you if I explain every little detail. What will help you is if we get through these as quick as or relatively quickly and understand the majority of the concepts. It's like the 80-20 rule. 80% of your, or 20% of your efforts determine like 80% of your output or something like that. So 80% of the results. So basically I'm going to cover only the most crucial things we need to learn, and rather than each individual description, because that's just going to fill up a lot of time that will waste. So we have our app set up and we have this background color, and that's good. And kind of like what I was saying with time, I could have shown you how to do this in 2 minutes, right? Without explaining what these individual things mean, without talking about all the prints. But I wanted to do that for the first video and maybe the first few, just so you can kind of understand how I learn things and how you can learn things faster. And that's by like reading these descriptions as I'm building these things and showing you how to build them. So you can pause it and if you need to, and read what you want to read. But yeah, let's just fly through these guides, these tutorials here, and let's build this awesome application. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video where we will learn how we can create this gradient view, this custom gradient class. Okay, I'll see you then.